This here is another viewer's broken gaming PC. It apparently fires up, loads into the BIOS no problem, but fails to load into Windows, which renders it pretty much useless. And no Linux bros, Linux was not an option for this owner. The programs he uses are Windows dependent. This is actually a work desktop, and sensitive client data was on a hard disk drive that I asked the owner to retain for liability reasons. Essentially what we have here is a desktop that fails to load into Windows, which means that he cannot serve his clients, which obviously is a big problem. Now I do expect most of these components are functional. The graphics card, for example, the CPU, motherboard, RAM, pretty much the entire platform, because the owner mentions he is able to get into the BIOS. The issue arises when he tries to load into Windows. He either can't see a storage drive or can't see the Windows partition on the storage drive. And that's what I hope we can get to the bottom of in this video. I hope you'll stay with me.
Are you sitting on a gaming PC without an activated copy of Windows? Forget $100+ retail keys, instead snag an OEM Windows 11 key for a fraction of the price to unlock the full potential of the OS. Oh, and don't worry, they'll still remove those pesky activation watermarks. Just click the links below to get started today, and be sure to use our special offer code SKGS for a sweet discount on a variety of options including Windows 11 Pro, Home, and more.
Hello there, and welcome to Fix or Flop. Are you ready? A playlist where we attempt to fix broken gaming PCs like this one for free. We don't charge for labor or replacement hardware if necessary, and that's thanks to your viewership. Thank you so much for clicking on this video. We can make money on the back end through sites like YouTube via monetization and brand deals like the one you just saw. So that sponsor there puts food on the table for us, it keeps the lights on, and allows us to continue performing services like these for free in the Central Florida area. If you or somebody who knows a broken system, you'd like a chance to have it fixed for free here, you can click the link in the description. Alrighty. Now this rig is more on the, let's say, entry-level side of things, especially by 2026's standards. There's a Core i5 9th gen Intel chip in here, 32 gigs of DDR4, a pretty bare-bones M-ATX motherboard, which is smaller than the ATX-supported standard of this case, and a GTX 1650. I'm sure by now you've already noticed this is an iBuyPower pre-built. It was purchased back in, I believe, 2020. This was around the time that things were extremely expensive, and where at times buying pre-built actually would save you money. So if you wanted to buy parts individually, especially on the graphics card side of things, you might end up paying more than what you could get the same card for in a pre-built. Not that it would have mattered too much for a 1650, but just a bit of context there. This case is not super airflowy or anything. It does come with 4 fans, and yes, the rig overall is quite dirty. But hey, if it works, right, that's really all that matters in the long run. We could easily clean this up with our electric duster. What I want to see though is whether or not this actually does load into Windows. Of course, we need to do our due diligence and verify that what the owner describes is actually what we see here in the office. So let's fire it up for the first time. I've got a portable monitor connected because, again, it does sound like we're at least going to get a post. I'm hoping we do. If we don't, then this system is much worse off than I initially expected. Power on at the rear. Let's click the power button up front. All right, good sign right away. Looks like we have an issue with maybe a couple of these RGB fans. I don't think they're addressable, but the top and bottom one up front aren't lighting up. So there's our post. That's, oh. What the heck is that? That's our power supply. I think what we're hearing is a fan bearing. Yeah, so anytime you hear something like that coming from a power supply, you probably should be worried. I don't even want to keep this system on much longer. I wanted to see if it at least loads into the OS. If it doesn't, or if it just hangs here, then it's possible we have maybe a corrupt partition. It's possible the drive itself is dying. What I'm probably gonna end up doing, just a spoiler ahead of time, is just replacing this drive with a faster one, maybe even an NVMe, just to have them set for hopefully several years. I expect this is probably a 2.5-inch SATA SSD, but it never actually loads into Windows. Like it definitely has a Windows partition because you can see the little spinny dots, that's Windows 10, but then once it looks like it's gonna load in, it just restarts like you just saw. And that is not typical behavior. Who knows how many times this SSD has been written over, and of course these have finite lifespans in that regard. This power supply, I can already tell you, looks sketchy to begin with because it has one of these 115 to 230 volt switches. Anytime I see one of these in a unit, I almost always just immediately replace it because I don't trust them. Like I don't trust the switching mechanism. I don't trust the architecture usually inside of them. They're usually pretty cheap. They're hardly efficient. And as is the case here, are often pretty loud. You might be thinking, Greg, if that is just a fan, what's the big deal? It's not like the unit itself's about to explode. But I have seen failing fans, or fully failed fans that folks don't realize aren't spinning anymore, result in power supplies that overheat and do quote unquote explode as a result. They're not literally gonna, detonate in most cases, but things can go very south very quickly in these. I think this is gonna be replaced. Some good things we can take away right away, however, the graphics card seems okay. We are getting picture out through that. The CPU, again, DRAM, motherboard, like the entire platform seems more or less stable. We can confirm that with a quick sanity check in the BIOS. A quick tap of the delete key and we're in, no problem. You can see our CPU temperature here, 31 degrees Celsius, so we don't have an immediate CPU temperature issue where the system might be powering off because the chip is hitting T-junction or something along those lines. So that seems fine. That's our 5-volt detection there at the bottom, as well as 12 volts of power delivery to the board seems okay as well. And you can see all 32 gigs of DDR5 is also detected there. So that's a good start. I do want to see, I'm expecting this to detect, yeah, so here we go. So our ADATA SU630. So this is where I imagine our Windows boot partition is installed and is likely the drive that's causing our problems. I am curious as to why for a single SSD setup, especially when you have just an extra hard disk drive for general storage, it's not really involved here, you would enable Intel RST. Typically, you could just run AHCI and be done with it. I don't think based on the symptom this is gonna fix it. But at this point, what's the worst that could happen? Honestly, everything else looks pretty standard in here. This hasn't really been tampered with too much. Go ahead and click save and exit and just see what happens.
A few moments later.
Wow, would you look at that? That actually fixed our issue? That's the only major thing we changed. I didn't really touch anything else in the BIOS, just looking over stuff. And we've loaded in no problem. Surely Intel RST wasn't the reason why this was acting up. And if so, why was it randomly enabled? Was there like maybe a setting within Windows that was switched on by accident that caused the drive to behave this way? Who really knows? The fact that we're here now is pretty great, but can it stay this way? I hesitate to sign into this operating system, but I think I'm gonna have to run further tests. I just wanna make sure that the SSD is not going to act up any longer. In the meantime, I did catch up with the owner and ask him whether Intel RST was toggled manually or if any other BIOS settings were tinkered with. He says no. The only thing that came up between the time the system was working and when it didn't was a Windows update prompt. He let that happen, or at least thought he did, and that's when he noticed issues with signing in. I'm not sure how a Windows update could have toggled that switch, or maybe the Intel RST toggle was set to enable the entire time, he just didn't know it, and it didn't actually affect anything until that corrupted update took place, if that is in fact what happened. Yeah, we're just speculating here, but what I can say is that I've reset the system multiple times now, and it looks like simply toggling that off has fixed our Windows boot issues. So what I'm gonna do next is power the system back off, pull off the right side panel, check wiring for those RGB fans, and then swap the power supply. What have we back here? And it is very possible that these fans just are dying. Maybe the RGB is failing, so it's not really a wiring issue, something we're not gonna be able to fix without just outright swapping the fans, which is something we will do if it comes to that. Again, this is gonna need some TLC. It's an older, cheaper system, and this is what happens with time, unfortunately. I will say that the fans themselves do look like they're wired correctly. I don't see, do we have discrete RGB? I guess we do. Oh, I see. Yeah, so a couple of these connectors just fell out of this little RGB hub here. We can easily take care of these now since they don't pertain at least directly to the power supply. We can swap this without needing to disconnect anything on the hub side. That's just gonna be, that one's a little bent. We can bend it back and then connect the second here. There we go. Now we shouldn't have any other RGB issues. But as for this guy, it is most definitely coming out. Also curious what brand unit this is. Maybe it's unbranded, which would be worse. Oh yeah, let me tell you, was not expecting Soli Tech. It's a 400 watt unit. It's not 80 plus certified. It doesn't belong anywhere near a quote unquote gaming PC. Now, if the only issue with this power supply, apart from the obvious, was a fan bearing, we could easily replace this fan. Looks like a 120 mil, you can see it mounts here with this integrated grill, and we could keep running it. But that would be a sin in my book. So what we're gonna do is replace it with a trusty, be quiet, Pure Power 13M. So this is their new Pure Power 13 series. We've been using 12 for a good while. This is a modular unit. It's 80+ gold certified. It's cybernetics gold certified, and it comes with a fantastic warranty, which is my way of typically gauging how much a manufacturer trusts its own products. Look at that, it's even in the fine print, a 10-year manufacturer warranty. Get a load of this beauty. Such a huge step up over the original power supply, both in terms of aesthetics, which let's be honest, doesn't matter too much in the case of power supplies, and wattage headroom, 850 with this one, which is more than double where he started. And while it might not matter much to him now, this will provide sweet upgrade headroom in the future. You can learn more about the Pure Power 13M, this particular unit, and others by clicking the sponsor link below. Big shout out to Be Quiet, by the way, for sending products like these and supporting us financially. It allows us to continue doing what we're doing here. We'll just slide this unit in, fan side down. This will allow us to utilize the case's ventilation at the bottom, reusing these original PSU screws. And now we can reconnect all these important bits. Also can't forget this 1650 needs supplemental power. Now we can quickly fire it back up and make sure all is well before moving on to the SSD integrity check. I do have the password for the operating system, so we can hop in quickly, just make sure that things are okay before we send this rig on its way. Power button, there we go. And it looks like, I'm just verifying the RGB is working. It looks like we're still having an issue with one fan. Okay, so while this is booting up, I'm gonna fix this behind the motherboard tray. We'll just keep the camera rolling because why not? Ah, there we go. Looked like we just had a sensitive cable, had to tug on it a little bit to get it illuminated, and there we go. So now we don't have an issue with RGB anymore. Just like the dozen or so times before, this rig is still consistently loading into Windows after disabling that Intel RST toggle, and the power supply is no longer making weird noises because it's been replaced with a much better one. I was able to log into Windows, no issues, everything seems stable so far, and if you're wondering, it's possible in post I might have blurred some things just for privacy reasons. This is not what it actually looks like in real life. With Crystal Disk Info, we can see that our health status is good, that this isn't always a one-stop shop. You want to verify with other programs and other tests as well. The power on count's 1910, which is pretty high, and power on hours are just over 36,000, so she's seen some mileage. And within ADA's own SSD health tracking software, you can see the SU630 is detected right away. Health is good, temperature's fine, but remaining lifetime is 36%. And that's because we've had 111 terabytes of total written data to this drive. And SSDs have a pretty finite amount of writes available. And you can see here in more smart info that we have several bad blocks and bad clusters. Now this isn't the end of the world for this drive. It actually has several spares to give out still. What'll happen is data stored on those bad blocks will be reallocated to extra good ones, these spares. And the fact that we still have spares remaining tells me that this SSD should still work reliably for at least a few months. But this isn't how I want to send this rig home. I've had this WD Blue SN550 500 gig drive for quite a while. It's honestly just collecting dust, and I'd rather repurpose this for this owner's rig because I know that he uses it for work, and the last thing I want is for his system to crash out on him while he's in the middle of doing something important for a client. Of course, I can't always make exceptions like these. NVMe's are not getting any cheaper, unfortunately. So this is not going to be a common occurrence. I don't want folks expecting these kinds of upgrades when they really aren't warranted, because again, at the end of the day, the SU630 in here is still functioning. It's just, I see the writing on the wall, and I can't in good conscience let this system go back to its owner knowing that he uses it as heavily as he does for work. Of course, because it's an NVMe, installation is super simple. We don't even need to remove anything on this board because it's a little more stripped down. So there we go. Then we can simply tighten it down with the included Phillips screw. And now back into Windows, I'm gonna type at the bottom here, Disk Manager. This is going to allow us to create and manipulate partitions on connected storage drives. You can see disk 1 down here is the one we just added. That's our 500 gig NVMe. I do have a few things installed on it. I think Windows is on this drive, but nothing sensitive. So I'm going to go ahead and delete these volumes. And you can see we're now left with a ton of unallocated space. And now we can right click on it and select New Simple Volume. We'll click Next, make sure that we have the full size allocated. Drive letter D is fine. We'll just call this, we'll call this backup for now, and I'll make sure that I disclose all of this to the owner, of course. We'll click Finish, and after formatting, you can see now we have about 0.5 terabytes worth of empty space. The owner can do whatever he wants with this, though I will recommend that at some point he reinstall Windows or migrate it over safely to this replacement drive. If this was my system right here, right now, I would install a fresh copy of Windows on the replacement NVMe and ditch the SU630 altogether. I just don't trust it. It has less life left to live than it has already lived. And when it comes to data of any kind, especially sensitive work-related data, I don't like to take chances. So that's exactly what I'm going to recommend to the owner, that he plan to reinstall Windows on the replacement drive and migrate any sensitive data still on the SU630 to it, just to be safe. I don't want to do it here because I know that there probably is still some sensitive stuff on this drive, despite the owner retaining his hard disk drive that was, again, removed prior to us even taking this system in. But because I know it's work related, it's not a liability that I want to bear at this point in time. I'm just happy that I know we no longer have a power supply issue or a potential one down the road. We fixed the RGB, which is a little less consequential, but still. And we now have a backup drive that is soon to be, hopefully, the primary drive in the system for if and when the SU630 fails. When it's all said and done then, we've A, averted a potential long-term power supply disaster after hearing what we did. Yeah, that sound was pretty awful. We've B, addressed an RGB issue with the front fans. That was a pretty simple fix. And C, set this rig up to avert another potential long-term disaster in an SSD failure. It's definitely been used quite heavily based on what we've seen. Again, this is a 6 going on 7-year-old system purchased pre-built from Best Buy. And so I really wouldn't be too surprised to find out that an SSD used this heavily would be on the verge of potentially failing over again the next 6 to 12 months. And for that, tossing in an extra NVMe with double the capacity should have him good for several more years. Thank you all so much for your continued support in this series. I cannot tell you how privileged I feel being able to help folks out like this and not charge them a dime. The looks on their faces, I really wish I could film these reactions. There are several reasons why I don't, but if you could see the looks on some of these owners' faces when I give them their rigs back in working order. Now, that's not to say that that's always the case, but when I can, and most of the time I can, it is so rewarding in its own right. And then on top of that, to have all of you watch these videos, this is such a cool job. Now, if you or somebody who knows a broken system and you'd like a chance to have it fixed for free here, I said it before, I'll say it again, there's a link in the description, be sure to fill it out. If you are local or able to drive in person to drop your system off and pick it back up, that's the only requirement. We may be opening it up to shipping in the long run, but for now at least, you gotta be local. Be sure to fill out that form and let us know what your issue is. We'll get back to you as soon as possible. For now, I'm gonna report the good news and drop this baby back off. Again, thank you so much for watching, and thanks for learning with me.